I know you folks are still eating and visiting, but I know some wanted to go ahead and start sharing. And so we'll take some time to pass the mic around and share stories and memories. And I don't know who would like to start first, so don't be shy. I think Mel has something prepared.
Yeah, I'm Mel Friesen. You probably wonder, well, how do I know Ed Springer? Well, it all started almost 50 years ago. I was a fresh graduate from seminary and had accepted a church responsibility in Hillsboro, Kansas. And Hillsboro is a religious community. There were 6 churches in that town, community. 2 of them were General Conference Mennonite, which is what Ed and I represented. 3 of them were Mennonite Brethren churches, which they come from a similar ethnic heritage of what the General Conference people do, but there's a slight difference of theology. And the 6th church was a small little Methodist church. So needless to say, it was a Mennonite community. Ed and Esther moved there about a few months after. When did you come to? Do you remember the month? February. Okay, I got there in August. And they filled the pastorate at First Mennonite Church in Hillsboro. And somehow that was the first time I met Ed. And I don't remember that day at all. Sorry. But I did get to learn a lot about him. And we've heard a lot of that story already from what was read in the sanctuary. But there were a few things I wanted to give 3 different illustrations. The first one I'm going to talk about is actually a religious experience. And that was we had a Maundy-Thursday meeting on a Thursday night, and we were planning to do this together. And I didn't have a clue what Maundy-Thursday was at that point, but we didn't cover that in seminary. I don't know why. But we finally decided on a theme that we would pick as each of us is a broken person. We have our own faults, and we have our own times when we fail. And if we would have been living in Jesus' time, we might have been part of the group that yelled, "Crucify him." Well, maybe not. But anyway, we are not perfect people. And so part of the experience was that we would, after the message and the service, toward the end, we had a wooden cross laying right in the middle of the aisle, along with a hammer and some nails. And we asked each person to come up and, as a form of confession, pound a nail into the cross. And I tell you what, I will never forget the sound that first hammer made. I could just imagine what it must have been like for Jesus to have experienced that. And I will never, the shaping of that whole event, I think Ed had a lot of influence in that, and it was a very, very significant event. The second event was, as I think of Ed, and you've heard a lot about his enjoying fun and having laughter, and also being a very, I forget the word now, but a very committed person, and committed to well-being, and he just had a very good spiritual outlook. But there was one flaw that he had trouble with. And he was part of that trouble just because he enjoyed a nice, clean, practical joke and loved to have fun with people. And we lived a block from Ed and Esther, my wife and I, and my young son was 3 years old. And my young son, Ed, and I were walking on the sidewalk, and my 3-year-old son came by in his tricycle, and it had a rope dragging behind it, and went right past Ed and I, and Ed just could not refuse. Blah! He put his foot right on that rope, and the poor thing flipped the tricycle forward. My 3-year-old son landed on the sidewalk with his chin, took 3 stitches to patch up, and Ed had a hard time ever forgiving himself for that. He talked to, I don't know how many times in the coming years he's mentioned that, and I said, Ed, it worked out okay. He doesn't have any long-term things. Forgive yourself. Yeah, I know, but it's so hard. And so that was his third story. Ed enjoyed, or seconds. The third story, Ed enjoyed kind of practical jokes, and even if he was the object of some of the joke. He shared a story with me when they were in Markham, which is where they had moved from Markham to Hillsborough. He said when they were at Markham, he often went swimming. Went to the Y, and he'd go swimming on a certain day of the week at a certain time, and he'd get his exercise week after week, and all of a sudden they noticed there was a woman that had that same schedule, and she probably noticed that he had the same schedule, and so they kind of got together and would visit for a bit just to get a little bit of rest, and then continue with their swimming. And Ed was telling me about this story, and I thought, oh, okay, that's good. He says, and then sometime later, he and his friends, church friends, were having coffee at the donut shop. And who walks in? But the swimming person. And Ed kind of waves and says, well, hi, it's good to see you. And she kind of looked at him with a strange look. Pretty soon came up to him and said, oh my goodness, I didn't recognize you with your clothes on. He said he had a hard time living that one down. But, you know, he could be comfortable telling even a story where he was the butt of the jokes. But, you know, he and I shared a lot of time together, and through the years enjoyed meeting each other at different points. And so thank you all for coming.
So my name is Dominic. I met the Springer 39 years ago when I was 14 years old. Went to met the Western Memnon High School in Oregon. So the Springer was, at that point, I think they called the weekend host. So they're basically my weekend parents. So the first time I met Ed was in the gymnasium at Western. I think he just came back from seeing his parents, and he bought back a shirt. I forgot what the T-shirt is, but that's kind of the first memory of him. I think Ken earlier mentioned you have coffee with Ed in Albany, and I know exactly which coffee shop you're talking about. I want to say it was the City Hall, but I'm not quite sure it was right, but there's a muffin shop in there. And I don't know how, at that point in time, I have no idea how Americans eat muffins. I'm a Canadian now, so it's another story. I was told you put the muffin in there and you dunk it into the milk. And that's how I've been eating muffin for the last 39 years. So thank you for that. I don't know if it's changed, but that's how I eat it, even today. The other two story, Ed loved to cook. And I'm being Chinese, and he liked Chinese food. So one of the things that he always wanted to do is cook on the weekend. And yes, we have experimented in that kitchen in Albany, I don't know how many times. We don't remember what we put in it. And I think Todd was lucky because you were at university. Amy, you may not be, if you remember. Sometimes we have no idea what we're eating. So that's between your dad and me. We just put stuff in and hopefully it works. So the Springer moved from Oregon to St. Louis, and I was privileged to go visit them from time to time. And two places you always make sure I have to go to. One is the frozen custard. Actually, he called frozen yogurt, but later on it was frozen custard. And I have no idea who burst that bubbles. Because as I said, this is healthy, just eat it. And I think every time I went to St. Louis, especially in the summer, we have to go there. The other place, I believe, was a train stations near the Arch. I have to go buy the fudge there. So the main thing I want to take away is, with Ed, you never go hungry. There's always a place to eat, always a place to find. So thank you so much, knowing the Spring for 39 years. It's been a privilege.
To your question there. Yeah. I'm Scott Neufeld-Wall from St. Louis, and I first got to know Ed. Kent, you said it was 40 years, and you were in VS. Where are you, Kent? You're here somewhere. Did he had to leave? Okay. So it was 35 years ago when I was doing VS in St. Louis, and Ed and Esther and family came to, and Ed was going to be the pastor of our church. Ed was so great about making the VSers feel welcome. Even though we were welcoming him to St. Louis, he really made us feel welcome. He took us out for food, of course, individually, spent time with us individually, talked about our faith lives, but just beyond that, visited us at our service sites. By the way, as far as the food, he took us to the St. Louis Bread Company. Most of you know that as Panera, but it's really the St. Louis Bread Company. You should just know this. Ed loved that place, and he probably helped them grow enough to be the Panera that it is today. So that's one of the things about Ed. But yeah, a huge support to me when I was in VS there. And at one point, I was living by myself in this really big, it was a 4-story house owned by some members of the church. It was in a little bit rougher neighborhood. And I had come home, late from one of my service assignments, and I tried the door, and the door just kind of went open. I didn't have to use my key. And I just went in and I started exploring, and then I thought, maybe this isn't a good idea, but I thought, the first person I thought to call was Ed. And I said, Ed, I'm in the house and I think somebody's probably broken in here. And he gave me some really good advice. He said, get out. And so I got out. So that was one story about Ed, but he was definitely the first person that I thought of to call in that situation because he had been such a huge support, and I knew that he wouldn't steer me wrong, and he didn't. And then another story, which is now the answer to this question here, is that this is a story that every time I saw Ed after he left, and he would either come back to St. Louis or we'd see him here. We have relatives in Goshen. Every time I saw Ed, he reminded me of this story, and it was about Ted Drewes. And there was a member of our church at the time that I was doing VS, a young man who had cancer, terminal cancer. And Ed was visiting him frequently, as of course Ed would do. And of course it would involve food. And so he was always bringing Ted Drewes because Eric had requested that he bring Ted Drewes. So close to one of their last meetings, Ed was like, thank you, Eric. It's been wonderful to talk about our faith journeys, to talk about our lives, to walk on this journey. Eric did die during Ed's time there. To go on this journey with you, and I want to thank you, Eric, for introducing me to this healthy, low-fat, low-cholesterol food. And Eric looked at him like, what? And it's like, you do realize it's not frozen yogurt. This is frozen custard. It has twice the eggs and is just as much sugar and fat as anything else. And so Ed thought, oh, okay. But honestly, I think even if he knew, that wouldn't have stopped him, right? Because one word that I think about with Ed, in addition to being super friendly and just loving everybody, is just gusto. I mean, he just lived life with a lot of gusto, and that's one of the things that I'm going to remember about Ed. So, yeah.
Okay. Leah, I did not see your email until just now, but thank you for telling me that I should read this. If you look back here at this picture frame, Grandma had us write letters to Grampy. I don't remember when, but she asked us to write some again. So this is my letter to Grampy. My name's Katerina. Okay. Dear Grampy, I can't believe that you're gone now. It was a long time coming, but for you to not be here at all is breaking my heart. Our last conversation will stay with me forever. I can't. You didn't say much of anything coherent, and you hadn't for a while. But in all your mumbo-jumbo, when I told you that I love you for the last time, you replied with the most coherent, I love you too. Those were the last words you ever said to me, and that means the world to me. You meant the world to me. Oh my God. I've been thinking about how it was when we were kids, when you were our Grampy with white hair and a bushy beard. Our colorblind, red and blue and yellow clad Grampy. A jokester, a food enthusiast, a people lover, and a friend to all. You were our funny grandpa. You were our kind and accepting grandpa. You were the grandpa who always showed up, even hundreds of miles away, to watch us perform our musicals. You were pretty much the best grandpa a girl could ask for. I know I only knew you for 22 years, but in those But in those 22 years, you taught me a lot. You taught me the value of friendship. You taught me the value of family, of little adventures, helping others, and you also taught me the importance of truly trying to know people, more than just a wave at the grocery store or a smile on the street. Also, why is nobody talking about Mike from the Woods anymore? You befriended a homeless man. This is how I understood it. Oh, what? Oh, sorry. You befriended a homeless man who lived in the woods on the mountain and picked him up with your grandkids in the car so he could go into the city to live his life. This is how I understood it. Yes, it was mega scary as a child, but your generosity and kindness are not lost on me now. I try to honor you in that way. When I try to talk to strangers and to know them in the world, it's in your memory, and that makes me smile. I wish more than anything that I could talk to you again, hear your laugh, and see your smile. I don't know how you did this. I wish I could have a real conversation with you about theology and the meaning of life, and I genuinely mean that. I wish you could have met Jess for real, and that she could have heard more of your stories. Messed up. Are you supposed to do this? I got boogers. Okay, sorry. I'm not looking anybody in the eye. I wish you were still here and that I could have known the you I remember from before just a little bit longer. And I just want you to know, and I hope you do know this, that yes, we have all, in fact, seen an eagle land on a log. Have you seen it, Sam? Okay. I guess I'd better let you go. Shalom and goodbye, Grampy. I'll love you forever. Please.
I'm Carl Berkey, and we moved from Oregon to Greencroft a couple years ago. My parents were Luke and Verna Berkey, and they had Ed and Esther as their pastors at Albany Mennonite Church, and I think they were one of their favorite pastors of all their lives. But then we moved to Newburgh, and Ed and Esther moved to Newburgh about 3 blocks apart. Esther would call me once in a while and say, "Carl, can you come fix my vacuum cleaner?" So I'd go over and I'd say, "Ed, do you have a Phillips screwdriver?" And he'd say, "What's that?" And that was the way Ed was. It probably was good that he didn't know, because if he'd have touched it, he'd have broke something easily without too much trouble. But Ed was such a kind, loving, and just a genuine person. He had so many friends in Newburgh that he disagreed with strongly, but they loved each other so much. And I thought, man, I wish I could learn to do that like he did.
I'm Dave Suter. I have a Community Mennonite Church Markham story and a Hillsbury story. Ed came to Markham, I think, in the 70s, and we had a church office up there for him, nice windows, and Ed said, "Well, I'd prefer to have an office with no windows, and I want an window air conditioner." Well, that doesn't work too well if you don't have windows. But anyway, we built it in this office, had no windows. And on the one side of the wall, there was like a storage room. So we cut a hole in the wall and put the air conditioner in there. And so the back of the air conditioner was in this storage room. And so Ed really liked this office with no windows. Now, the Hillsbury story is, we were there, and World Conference was in Wichita. And Ed invited us to your house. It was the hottest time in Kansas forever. It was at over 100 degrees every day. And one day I think it was 111. So Ed invited us to his house for evening meal after the conference session. So we go there and we assumed, well, we'd be eating inside. But no, Ed is out there grilling. In this 100+ degree temperature.
This is also from Markham days when Ed and his family were there. And this, a few years ago, I asked people who had been to Markham for some memories. And so this was actually, Melanie helped him with these, answer the questions. But, so he said, one of the ministries of the church was the daycare center where there were 75 children attending, with the center open from 6 to 6, and often gave us things to laugh at. And one day, in his first week, when he went up to his office, the one without the window, and there were 3 to 4 kids upstairs in my office playing. They weren't supposed to be there. I stopped and told them I was a new minister, and I know you're not supposed to be up here. And you get downstairs, and I don't want to see you up here again. And I won't tell you all this, but one of the kids used a swear word, which he probably hadn't heard it before. He said it got me to by the gills. Is what he said. And his good friend in the Markham church was Myrtis Odom, and Grace knows her, but I don't know anybody else from the Springer family would. Anyway, Hernish, he was one of the first times that he was at the church, and after he gave the sermon, he went to the back and stood so people could greet him and so he could say hi. But she approached him and stuck out her hand, and he stuck out his hand, and she kind of smacked it away and said, "I don't do that. I give hugs." And she grabbed me and gave me a big hug. And so that was how his introduction to the Markham church.
I'm Ruth Ann Gardner, a friend of Esther. I think it was soon after they moved to Greencroft, but I had met them. And there was a fire alarm. And I don't remember whether it was just a trial or whether it was a real alarm. But what we're supposed to do when there's a fire alarm is go outside our door. And a little while after that, I saw Ed down in the lobby visiting with people. And I said to him, did you go out did you go out your door when the fire alarm rang? And he said, well, I was in the shower, so how could I do that?
Hello, my name is Ben. I am the middle grandchild. And normally I would say that the middle child is always forgotten and never paid attention to. But with my grandfather, I could tell you that that was not the case, and that he made sure that each one of his grandchildren knew that they were loved equally by him. One of the biggest things that I'm sure many of you know is that he placed a key importance on meaningful connection with people. He had his favorite coffee shop in Newberg, Oregon, which was Chapters Books and Coffee. And you could always tell that he was there by seeing their shoebox car, the Scion, in the parking lot with the Coexist sticker on the back. And growing up, I never understood what was so important about connecting with every single person inside Chapters bookstore, to the point that by the time I had sat down, my hot chocolate was no longer hot. But he loved Chapters Coffee House. He played Santa there every single year. It was kind of cool getting to know Santa personally. You know, the other kids were clueless, but I was keyed into who Santa was. And later in my life, as I got to grow as a person, I finally understood why meaningful connection was so important, as he made everybody, that he interacted with feel seen. One of the biggest things I struggled with growing up was with my identity. Being adopted, you could, if you had looked at us, maybe you wouldn't have known that I was his grandson. I was too Asian to fit in with the white kids, and I wasn't Asian enough for the other Asian kids. But regardless of that fact, my grandpa made sure that everybody knew that I was his grandson, not his adopted grandson. I was his grandson, and he loved me just as much as anybody else, as if I was blood related to him. So when he came to pass, I had reached out to Chapters Bookstore to see if I could do something in his honor. Painting, plaque, maybe if that was too much, even just, taking a picture with the Chapters Bookstore staff with his picture. They were very quick and very kind to reply to me that they would love to put up a plaque in his honor next to the bench that he played Santa at. So his plaque reads, in quotation marks, Santa's Bench, followed by in loving memory of Ed Springer, September 20th, 1939 to October 12th, 2025. Husband, father, grandpa, and friend. Ed was a regular and our annual Santa Claus. Chapters and his family will miss him dearly. And it was really important to me that that plaque was there so that other people could be reminded of his sincere want to connect with other people.
Don't want to miss anyone.
I only talked to Ed a couple times in my life. My contact with Ed has been through Esther, my friend. And I just want to say, I want you all to know that I think Ed was a person with very good taste. He married Esther.
Do you want to say anything, Esther? Do you want to say anything? Okay. Thank you all for sharing, all of you for being here to honor Ed's life, and blessings to you. Feel free to continue to visit, and there's plenty of food if you want to get some more. And yeah, blessings.